Sam, welcome to Crafty.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be
Of
here.
course, of course. Man, Con Alma is just so great, and we're thrilled to have it on the channel. I would love for you to take us to the moment in time where this project became a part of your life and how it happened.
Oh,
To dive
yeah,
straight in, sorry.
yeah, no. Again, it's a couple of films ago, so I'm having to think back, go down
Right,
memory
right.
lane. So I'm a professional actor, stage actor primarily. I teach acting, and the closest place I can usually practice my craft is Dallas. So I live in Waco, Texas. Dallas is about an hour and a half, and it's got a dozen or so equity theaters, and so 2 or 3 times a year I go up and do shows. In this particular year, I got a chance to be in a show, one of my favorite shows, by August Wilson called Two Trains Running. Uh,
Mm.
it's a show that I was an understudy for years and years ago, and was really, really excited about being able to be in the show professionally. And so I started a friendship with the director, uh, and we worked through the show. In the beginning of the show, the beginning of the show was a near disaster. Um, One of the main characters, you can say the main character, uh, never learned his lines, um,
Wow.
and so we were a week from opening the show, and the director of the show, which we did not know until this point, had played this role before, and so he fired this guy and stepped into the role before opening night. Um, and understandably, there were some fumbles first couple of nights, but I think it was the third or fourth night where the director just completely lit up and it just all locked in, and he was fabulous. I mean, he was really, really great. Um, it was almost like, I know it's really, particularly for the stage, really hard to direct and be in a show, but it was almost like I wish he'd been in it from the beginning. We would have
Sure.
been really great if he was a part of the process from the beginning. Uh, and so that director is Will Cotton in Con Alma.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Is the lead actor in Con Alma.
Wow. Yeah. Man, he's
Um,
great.
yeah, yeah. So the woman who played opposite me plays his daughter in the film. So both Bill Ray, who plays Will Cotton, and Shanidra Evans, who plays Alma in the film, were in
Yeah.
the show in Two Trains Running with me. And we'd gotten close through this really crazy process. And I remember leaving Two Trains, one, being really satisfied with the run relative to what it could have been. It ended up being a very successful show, really, really fun show. And I remember leaving and thinking about Will and Shanidria and just how lovely they were on stage, how wonderful they were to work with, how great and supportive they were to me and to everyone else who was kind of had to get, you know, swim through this process.
Mm.
And so I have a writing and producing partner, Ryan Romine, I've been working, who's been my best friend for over 20 years. And he's the best man at my wedding. And we started making movies about a decade ago. And we had made two shorts before this. And I went to Ryan and I rehearsed all this that I'm telling you now. And I just said, hey, I've had this experience. There are these two actors I work with who I think is just great. I think we could come up with something for them that's a good fit for them, that can
Hmm.
show off what they can do. And I'd love to direct them. I love to put them on film. It wasn't even about, oh, let's put me in something else with them. I really just wanted to feature them. Uh,
Yeah.
and so we came up with the story of Con Alma. As you can tell, we're huge jazz fans. Just about all of our films have something to do with music, or a couple of our films are in black and white. It's just we're just
Mhm.
obsessed. We're jazz heads, audiophile. And so that story got merged with this other story that I had been working on, about this jazz guitarist. I mean, very, very obscure jazz guitarist. I we've spoken to jazz heads who have no idea who this guy is. There's this Canadian guy by the name of Ed Bickard,
Okay.
who is he's got to be one of the 4 or 5 greatest jazz guitarists I've ever heard, and nobody
Wow.
knows who he is. Uh, he was very reclusive and private. Didn't play publicly very much, but I remember old videos of seeing him play in trios and stuff. And there was a period of time where I was kind of obsessed with figuring out where this guy was. And there's this small snippet of his bio that talks about really tragically, I think it was his wife who died, and he just stopped playing. Like,
Mm.
I don't know, this happens with artists, right?
Yeah.
Something really horrible happens to you, or you feel like your ability to play changes or whatever. Sonny Rollins quit playing just to practice under a bridge in Brooklyn, for years and years. All these geniuses do weird things, right? But he literally just stopped. He like stopped in the 80s, and he was like only in his 50s or whatever. He just stopped
Wow.
playing. And so I kind of got interested in thinking about a story, just obviously if I don't know the guy, a fictitious idea, trying to justify why somebody would do that, who was that great. And so that Ed Bickard, real life Ed Bickard, kind of got merged with the Will Cotton character in terms of this guy's hanging it up. Why is he really hanging it up? I mean, he's not. The better you are, the older you are, particularly in jazz, the better you get is basically the idea. So here's this guy that's older, but not that old, but he's hanging it up. What happened, and so yeah, the story of Con Alma got merged with that and a couple of actors I'd worked with that I wanted to feature. Yeah, and we wrote this pretty long script, 19, 20 pages
Oh
worth of
wow.
script of Con Alma. We submitted that script to a couple of contests. It did very well before we even shot it, which is something we like to do. Sometimes you write a script
Yeah.
and we want to get a kind of more objective feel for it. And so a couple of times in the past, we've submitted it to contests to see if it lands anywhere. Con Alma had done pretty well. It won some diversity screenplay awards. Uh, and so we shot all 20 pages of that. I mean, we shot the whole thing.
Oh wow.
And the cut was so awful. The original cut of the film was so awful. I sat on it for months and months. I mean, over a year, I sat on Con Alma. Nobody saw it because I just said this is unwatchable. Uh, it just did not translate to film to the movie. Um, it was one
Was
of the things I wish I would have known before we shot all of that, and also
yeah.
something I wish I would have known when we were done that I could have communicated specifically to the editor. I mean, it went through 4 editors. Um, yeah, it was there. I'm going to shoot you straight, Alex. There was definitely a point in time where I thought it wasn't going to see the light of day ever.
I,
Um,
I definitely know that feeling.
you know
What?
that feeling? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. What was there anything that like you were picking up on set, or was it just a total shock, rug out from under you in the editing room?
It didn't feel it. We shot the film in 3 days,
Oh wow.
so
Okay.
it didn't feel like it was dragging on set or that it was going to be too long. Yeah, it was just. I think it was. I'm not going to say young, but perhaps younger filmmaker, just not getting a good feel for how it was going to cut together
Mm.
and being really married to the script and not loosening up maybe some improv or giving the actors a little bit more leeway. Uh, I mean, they didn't say anything. Photography department was saying. I didn't get the feel it was going to feel as long and as slow as it ended up being in their original cut.
Gotcha.
And I'm not obviously as director, you're deeply involved with editing, but I'm not an editing technician. I'm not.
Sure.
I don't. well, like Mav, who edits all of his films. I'm not an editor. I actually really appreciate the objectivity of an editor.
Yeah.
So I've always hired out an editor. Uh, and so for a short period of time, I was just blaming it on editors. I was, King Henry, just it's the wife's fault that I don't have any boys, right?
You're right.
So I I just, an editor, no, that's not the right cut. No, that's not the right cut. Meanwhile, I'm not communicating to them what the better cut is. They're taking swings at it, and it's not happening. And so
Sure.
this is going to sound 100% made up, but I will go to my grave with this being the truth. I dreamed the cut that Con Alma is now.
Dude, it's so funny you say that because I'm not trying to step on your story here, but I've literally had the same thing happen where I
Have
had a
you really?
short. Yeah, where I like woke up the next morning and was like, there's a better cut of this movie, and I went and did it. Yeah,
Thank
but yeah,
God.
sorry, continue. Yes.
No, this totally confirms I'm not crazy. And yes.
Or maybe we're both crazy. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I take that back. It doesn't confirm anything. We just crazy. That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And so there was this former student at Baylor who was working in Dallas, Katie Allison, who ended up coming to me through a recommendation because I was talking to colleagues, I was talking to filmmaker friends. Like, I'm so stuck on this film. I feel like I've let everybody down who worked on it, but particularly the actors. I wrote it for them. They hadn't seen it and they put in all this work. And I was like, I got to find a way to get this. And so found Katie Allison. I had this dream and we sat down in one sitting, almost one sitting, we got this cut that Con Alma is now. And it just ended up being taking out over half the film.
Yeah.
The original version of the script, the way the script is constructed is there's this long intro with him in the club. And then the middle, most of 2/3 of the film is them sitting in his living room having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we don't go back to the club until the very, very end. And we realize, what he's talking about as a result of the conversation they had. Right. And the dream was the back and forth cut, much smaller, more efficient storyline that Con Alma is now, right? So I think what the dream did is, we always tell students about this, what the dream did is made me kill my darlings.
Yep.
It was, I think, for all that time, just because of how we felt about the script, the inception of it, I think it was a little too precious.
Sure.
That feeling?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think all the cuts that came down, I was like, oh, well, we can't cut that. Oh, well, we can't cut that. And the dream was more like, yeah, you can. Like nobody has to know what all this other backstory and the super exposition thing that you've done. It can still be a fairly efficient and compelling story if it's shorter. So yeah, what is the movie? 6 minutes?
Yeah.
We cut over 10 minutes out of the film.
Wow. That's such an important lesson. And I know Maverick talked about it in his interview as well, which is, you haven't made the movie until you've cut your favorite shot or whatever
the Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah,
yes,
Darren Aronofsky
that from me because I stole that from Aronofsky. He needs to credit both of us when he
needs to credit the line of stealing. Yeah. But no, it's such a good lesson though, because I think there is a tendency, especially in your earlier films, like when you, as a director, you're thinking like, I don't know if I'm going to make anything else, or I don't know if I'll ever have anything this good again, or there's all that like self-talk that happens.
Yep.
And you're going like, okay, well, like, everything has to be in, and I have to make it work. And it's like sometimes the better movie is the shorter one and the cleaner one and the
exactly
one
that's
right. Yeah, so it's a really valuable lesson for filmmakers who are just starting out. And thanks for sharing that story.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
That's awesome. So I would love to talk about first of all, when that first cut was about, what you say, like 16, 17 minutes, something like that.
It was 19 minutes.
19 minutes. Were you sharing that cut with anybody to get any kind of feedback, or was it just you watched it and you went, no, this is not it at all?
Just me and Ryan,
Yeah,
my co-writer, co-producer,
yeah,
uh, because have we changed this? Yeah, we usually don't show cuts to people until we feel like we've hit a wall on what to fix.
sure,
And with Con Alma, it was like, well, we know what's wrong. I mean, why are we showing this to people when we know what's wrong? We just don't know how to quite fix it.
yeah,
We didn't feel comfortable with showing cuts to people. We just, because we knew it wasn't right. We knew it wasn't right. Uh, if we had done that, would somebody have ended up with the dream that they ended up having? maybe, maybe. To be quite honest, I think we didn't say this, but I don't think we showed the cut, which nobody will ever see that cut except for
right.
the editors we fired. I don't, I don't, I think we were ashamed.
Sure.
I don't think we
Yeah,
wanted our friends, our filmmaker friends, our colleagues, peers to be like, the last couple of things you guys made were better than this. What are you guys doing? Like, this is garbage. We didn't want that. I don't think anybody would have said that,
yeah,
but I think that was the concern. Uh, and again, it felt like I was letting people down.
yeah,
I wanted to show people something that I could be proud of, and that first cut wasn't it. Those first cuts just it wasn't it, and so that's why it was. It was probably do this differently, but the thought was we rather just bury the footage than open it up and have just an open season on people recommending how to fix it. Like
sure.
we were more prepared to just not show it than to show it to a bunch of people to have it fixed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. I'm actually I'll share a story that I don't think I've ever talked about publicly before, but I made a short. Well, there was a short that I was making, and I shot it once and got into the editing room, and I think the sound was just terrible, and there was some shots that were just unfixable and whatever. I was like, this is it's not workable. Like this isn't going anywhere. I shot it again
Oh
in
my.
in Chicago. Uh, and the first one was shot in Nebraska. Shot it again in Chicago, and again, just total failure. Like the sound was unusable. It just wasn't good. Wasn't happy with it, and neither one of those versions of the same short has ever seen the light of day. So I failed twice on the same short. And
Wait, did
you
you
know,
did you use the same actors?
no, well, one of the same actors, and then the other one was a different actor. Yeah.
And both times it was a sound issue?
Yeah, both times. Well, the first time I think there was some sound issues, and like we could have done ADR and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't just sound. It was like, it was just that feeling again, like you're talking about, like this just isn't good. It's not up to par. It wasn't anybody else's fault but my own. Uh, and but yeah, no, I was just like, I've never shared that before, but yeah, it's definitely. I know the feeling, right? Like of having to just step
Well, you
away and be
should,
like, this
Alex, you
this
should
isn't good.
mix both films and make this like David Lynch. The characters change.
Yeah,
Different
there
people
you
are
go.
playing the same character, and
Do some
little
experimental
little
weird.
people coming out of boxes. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
it's probably brilliant if you just.
just mesh them. I gotta find the footage is so old now. I'd have to figure out where even that hard drive is.
You have to transfer it from tape or something.
Yeah, probably. But
That's
well,
crazy. So you
yeah,
went through with it. I don't. Yeah, I think I might have one film people haven't seen, but you've got a
yeah.
film that's
I
just
got
not
yeah,
not
that I
gonna
shot
happen.
twice.
You
And
shot
went to a
twice.
totally different state to shoot the second time, as if that was gonna help. Um, but yeah,
New
yeah.
York. How about New York for the third one?
New York number three. Third time's the charm.
That's right.
Um, No, but it's one of those things, right? Like that I thought it was so good at the time, and looking back on it now, I'd be like, I could probably write something better in 10 minutes in my sleep. Like, it's again, that as you learn and grow, it's like, you're like, okay, it's not so precious anymore. Like you can,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, But tell me, so I'd love to know more about your company. Is it 4 a.m. Tent Revival? Am I saying that right?
Mm,
Okay.
that is correct. Yeah.
How did that come to be?
We just we have no money. We so
as
my
as
buddy.
most film companies function,
That's the
like
reason why you have a
yeah,
company, to have no
yeah,
money.
right.
Uh, Again, my buddy Ryan, who I've known forever. I met him maybe the second week of college, and we've been friends ever since. And we had these lofty ideas about making films when we were in college. And I don't think we dedicated a single word to a script in college. Uh, Never did it. This is not original, but we were really inspired by Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and the whole Good Will Hunting and the
Oh
partnership
yeah,
and writing your way into the industry and all of that. Like 50,000
totally.
people are, right? I mean, people
Sure.
still are.
Yeah.
And so we were like, hey, that could be us. Look, they won the Oscar, those guys. And did nothing. Did absolutely nothing in college. And so we graduated, we went our own separate ways, we got married, we both have two kids, we both went to grad school. He got his MFA in poetry from Fairleigh Dickinson. I
Oh
got my
wow.
MFA in San Diego. I started teaching. He started teaching a little bit, but he was the editor for a magazine, and he's a poet. He writes, and part-time stay-at-home dad. And I mean, we're just old guys, and we got this opportunity about a decade ago to make our first film, which no one will see. Uh, and it was really, though, the culmination of all these ideas we had 10 to 15 years before that, to be like, this is something we really want to do. This is something we really want to take a shot at. Uh, and so after that, we were like, we should kind of solidify our collective and be a group. Like, if we ever get approached, like, this is who we are. This is who we are together. Like, we have our own families and we're our own interests or whatever, but when we're together, we're this thing. Kind of like
Yeah.
the NERD band with Pharrell Williams.
Hmm.
Like when Pharrell's with NERD, he's NERD, right? And then when
Yeah.
he's not, he's just Pharrell, right?
Right.
That's what it kind of felt like. It's like, hey, when we're together, we're NERD. We got to be something, right?
Sure.
And so we used to we both grew up, uh I wouldn't say fundamentalist, but pretty strident Protestant Christians. Our families still are,
Yep.
and we spent a lot of time talking about that stuff when we were in college. And sometimes we'd sitting in our kitchen, on like a Wednesday night, talking about some random verse in the Bible, or like some random coincidence that we had, and some dream we had, and we were trying to interpret it. And we'd look up, and it'd be like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and we look at each other, and we just said, "Oh, we just had a tent revival, didn't we? Just the two of us in this kitchen, and it's 4 a.m. We should go to bed. We have class at 8."
That's awesome.
We've talked our way through the night about God knows what, like literally God knows what.
Yeah.
And so when we circle back thinking about just our friendship, and we kind of think the name, I mean, we're not particularly that way anymore or have the same belief system, but we think it's kind of funny. And it's something that's a very, like most of these things are, it's very inside jokey,
Sure.
the 4 a.m. tent revival, but it was a name that was not taken.
It's a big
Right?
one. It's a big one.
Which is
Yeah.
a big one,
Yeah.
right? And it's something that represents our kind of succinctly, even though it's a kind of long name, but kind of succinctly represents our friendship and the start of our friendship, to be called
Yeah.
4 a.m. revival. So yeah, if we ever actually became anything, we I don't think we changed the name. We really, really like the name a
That's
lot,
awesome.
just
I
because
love the
of all
story
the
behind it.
memories it draws
Yeah.
up as a result of thinking about it.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So, talk a little bit. So, one of the questions I like to ask everybody on the channel is, how did you have to get crafty in order to make your film? Because I think that again, like the name Crafty represents
Mhm.
what we all, we all snack on a film set. We all like to go get the bag of chips, but
We
then
love Crafty.
we love Crafty, but then it's also like the mentality of short filmmakers, because there's no money in shorts, and you're getting a budget together is super challenging, and so it's like you have to not only pull all your resources and your favors and all that kind of stuff. So how did you get Crafty in order to make Con Alma happen?
Man, that's
Apart
such a
from what
great
you've
question.
already shared about the changing the edit and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah. That's a great question because it was absolutely a film done on favors. So this is how favors work for me, and I'm sure you're going to be familiar with this, and people who might see this will be familiar with this. Most of the people who I hired, and we'll put quotation marks around hired for crew, were people who I was in their films
yeah,
for nothing, or for very little. And it wasn't even a kind of, hey, I'm reaching out to you, fill in the blank DP, because I was in your film for free, and I'm gonna hold it over your head. It was more of almost kind of a mutual, hey, do you have a weekend? I'd really like you to do this, blah blah blah, without me even really bringing up that, because they were like, oh, Sam's reaching out. I could totally scratch his back on this because he hooked me up, a few months ago, a couple of years ago, whatever.
sure,
And I can probably connect to everybody who worked on the film to something that I'd done for them before. Uh, Student films, thesis films, independent films that they shot,
yeah,
features. I mean, everybody who came and worked on Con Alma, I'd worked with before, or they'd help me on another film or something like that. And so that was really, yeah, that was really a great kind of gift to have,
yeah,
to make the film. That if I wasn't really calling in favors, I wouldn't have been able to afford to make the film. I ended up just having to pay for Crafty, really, food,
yeah,
gas for some folks who drove in. A lot of people were local.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, and what's nice about, so this will be a connection to Shreveport. What's nice about a place like Waco is it's changing, but it's still basically a small town. It's
yeah,
basically still a college town. We're still a little bit under 200,000 people. Uh, and so it wants to offer big town amenities, but it's really a small town. It's really a college town. It's not small College Station college town,
right,
but it's closer to that than DFW, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
Oh, for sure.
Uh, and so everybody knows everybody, really. I mean, if you do a particular thing around here, people know. Uh, the degrees of separation is not 6 from anybody in the city. It might be 3 max.
Yeah,
And so a guy who gaffed on my film was really tight with the guy who owned the club we shot in, you know? And he was like, he's not gonna care if he's not gonna want any pay. He's just gonna want some money because he wants to go get his dinner next door. He likes the bangers and mash that they make. Like something, it was randomly specific like that.
yeah,
Wanted
yeah,
me
yeah.
to buy him bangers and mash. And we got that whole club all day, uh, because I bought a guy bangers and mash, but my gaffer knew the guy, and that's how we got in the club. I
That's
didn't have
awesome.
any outlets to any clubs outside of that. Uh, I I was good friend. We were good family friends, with the house that's in the film. They offered up their house. They said, "Hey, they had 3 kids. They have 4 kids." And I go to the house all the time and say, "This is really a lovely home. I think this would be a great place to shoot." I'm like, "Hey, this is when we're going to be out of town. You guys take it over."
Wow.
Which, how hard it is to get people to give up their house or their own stuff because movies just wreck everything.
Yeah,
But because it's people I knew locally and they trust me, I got the house for free. I didn't have to Airbnb it or anything like that. Just
it's
got
awesome.
somebody's house. Uh, so yeah, working in a small town for something like this is really, really helpful. Calling in favors. I think those kinds of things allow you to be crafty. It would have been interesting. I would have probably had to take a different tack if, I was dropped in the middle of Chicago
Yeah.
and somebody was like, make the same film. It would be a little different.
Yeah.
How I
Yeah.
got crafty, I think would be a little different. But I think I was allowed to be crafty the way I was because of where I live and the work I'd done before and the people I know. That really helped me make the film for little or nothing, in a short amount of time.
I think that's there's something about like towns like Waco and Shreveport and other small towns that I've filmed in that it's like there's still an excitement about the idea of filmmaking. Like
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
there's no burnout like there is in New Orleans or Los Angeles or New York or it's like
right,
people it's not a common thing, and there's not that history of people ruining it for the other people, like an example of the house. Like as long as you leave things the way that you found them or better, like those people had a great experience having a film crew come in, and it's like nobody's been there in the past that ruined that for them. So that's
right,
yeah,
right.
it's really so valuable to be in a place where that excitement is still alive about the idea of like, oh, these people are making a movie, this is in my house is having a movie shot in it, like that's
Yeah,
versus like, oh my god, they want to shoot a movie in my house, like yeah,
again.
that's yeah
Right. Yeah,
yeah
I honestly, Alex, have no reason. I can't think of a scenario unless, well, no, that's not true either. Unless we were writing or trying to produce something very culturally specifically or location specific, I can't really think of a reason why I wouldn't shoot here.
yeah. No, I
Even
mean,
if we got into like feature land or shooting features, like several people shoot features here. I just, because if it's inside, well, it doesn't matter.
right,
You can shoot that anywhere. But if
right,
am I trying to capture like the Statue of Liberty or the Hollywood sign? Okay, you know,
sure.
you might have to go there, but I have a hard time right now thinking of a scenario that would bring me out of the city to make a film. Like
Well,
I would be
and
starting from scratch trying to make
t-
something somewhere else. It would
totally.
cost me 3 times as much.
Totally. No, I mean it makes complete sense, and I think Waco's probably unique too in the fact that like your proximity to Austin for
Mm,
crew and gear and all that kind of
yep,
stuff. Like if you were to like again level up and make something bigger like on a bigger scale, like you that proximity to Austin is so invaluable, I would imagine.
it's exactly what happened in my last film. So Break, the film I made after Con Alma. Yeah, it was half Austin crew. We got rentals from Austin, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's close enough that, oh, we're getting this on a Friday and needs to be returned on a Monday. Okay, no problem. Like we could get it back. We could pick it up, and it's not that long of a drive. And so, yeah, Waco being in between Dallas and Austin is also super super helpful. In
yeah,
terms of actors too, like I've had a lot of actors not feel like it's too out of the way to drive down or drive up from Dallas or Austin to be a part of stuff. And
yeah,
so there's a great pool of actors in the state who live in those two cities. Uh, even coming from Houston is 3 hours. I mean, Houston's almost Louisiana. Um, so yeah, it's a really, really great spot to make films. It's not going to be the first name that comes up if you go across the country and be like, "Where's a good place to make films?" Waco's not going to be on the list. But actually, having been here for so long, I think it's actually a really, really good, helpful place to make films on a budget. You know?
completely. And well, and I don't think even Austin would have been on that list at the time that Linklater and Rodriguez
Oh,
and
that's
those
true.
guys
Yeah,
were
'90s.
making
Yeah, '80s,
movies there.
'90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, no way, no way. It's
So
totally
I
that.
think it's kind of that bloom where you're planted mentality. Like, if you can figure out a way to make cool stuff where you're at, do it. I
That's
love it.
exactly right. Yeah.
Um, so I guess this is more of like a bigger question, but like what sort of lights a fire? Like what gets you excited about storytelling? What is it about this industry and this craft and acting and directing both, like that gets you up every morning, it gets you excited about what you do?
it gets me up some mornings. Some mornings it makes you go back to bed.
Yeah, you're like, oh god, I didn't have one of those cool dreams that solved all my problems.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, go to sleep and not wake up. How about that?
Right.
That is a big question. That is a great question. I don't want to get too touchy feely. But, I there is something for all of us. I'll speak broadly and then I'll speak specifically. There is something for all of us that is uh genetically engineered as it relates to story. Humanity absorbs story in a particular way that we have now deemed evolutionarily important. Right?
Yeah.
Story is one of the most important things we have. We've made it necessary. Uh, we've made it meaningful. It brings meaning to our lives in a very particular way. And we're the only animals on Earth who have it. You know, anything that's alive can be entertained, but not everything can absorb story and endow it with meaning. That's something that's incredibly human.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, as I fell in love with the theater and film as a young person, one, it was kind of an indoctrination because my mother is a middle school theater teacher, and some of my earliest memories are sitting in the back of her rehearsals. And actually, my next short film is loosely about this
Oh, awesome.
and about her. Uh, and so I was always exposed to it from a very early age. You know, leaving rehearsal and watching a movie. Movies have just always spoken to me in a particular
Yeah.
way. It's been a way that I've been able to absorb story and give it meaning to my life. Uh, and so when I was growing up watching films, I thought the main way I wanted to be, what I was responding to in terms of films was performances.
Hmm.
Uh, and I wanted to be like those performers. I wanted to be that part of the story. You know, obviously, the theater represents a large group of storytellers. Uh, and in film, the storyteller I was responding to was the actor.
Hmm.
Not necessarily the visuals or the sound or anything, but the actors. And I just, you know, through the 90s, I just went on these crazy binges, just wanting to know everything about these actors. The Dustin Hoffmans, the Gene Hackmans, the Brandos, the De Niros, Pacinos.
Yep.
You know, Denzel was coming up during that time, and then going way back to the Spencer Tracy's, Sidney Poitier's. I could
Hmm.
not get enough. And I realized before I went to college, I did no theater, I did no acting before college, um, except for my senior year in high school. I realized if I wanted to be like those guys, the thing they have in common is the theater,
Hmm. The training, yeah. The
the
background.
training.
Yep.
I mean, most the guys I named are trained actors from the Meisners and Stella Adlers and
Hmm.
mid-century teaching gurus, Strasberg. They all came from the theater because no duh, in the 50s and 60s, where else are the actors? There was no concept. Now you can graduate from high school, pack up everything you own, go to LA and
Yep.
audition for soaps,
Yeah.
right? Like it does not require training but that's where all the actors were coming from in the 50s and 60s because that's where the actors were. There
Yep.
was no, if you wanted to be an actor back then, you go to school for acting, right? They were pulling, Bonanza and Stagecoach. They were pulling people off Broadway to be day players. Uh,
Yeah.
so I thought that was, if I wanted to be as good as those people, that was the route I needed to take uh, because that's what they did. Not knowing that, didn't really require that, but I don't regret taking that route, but it definitely wasn't a necessary route, obviously. And so, yeah, just I was introduced to the theater first, fell in love with film, kind of came back to the theater as a result of wanting to be involved with film, and fell in love with the theater. In terms of story, I still tell people because I work in the theater. I teach in the theater and film department. But I always tell film students, I still think the best way to learn how to tell a story is the theater. And it's really because they've been doing story for over 2,000 years. And film's a
Yeah.
baby compared to theater. And there is no film without theater. And yeah, I mean, there's
100%. Well, and even like thinking about, sorry to tangent, and we'll
no,
definitely
no.
go back, but like, you know, even thinking about like how the talkie is even newer than film,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
like that
Yeah.
for years, and you know, I think probably decades. I'm terrible with my history, but it was just visual storytelling, and then all of
That's
a
right.
sudden, like, so then the theater has an even bigger influence on film with the introduction of like, hey, we need a script, we need a writer for this thing. Like,
That's
you
right.
know,
Words
yeah,
matter. How your
words
voice
matter.
sounds, singing in the
Yeah,
rain, right?
yeah, oh yeah, God, yeah, yeah, I love that show. I actually got to do that show. That was fun.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, I mean that's it in a nutshell. And it became really,
Yeah,
really important. And the theater became even more important as it
yeah,
relates to film when that happened. You're absolutely right to point that out. And so yeah, I got, a highfalutin theater training, thinking I was going to be involved eventually in film after doing stage work. I worked in New York. I won't say work. I lived in New York for 3 years. A daughter was born there. We moved back to Texas. I started teaching. My son was born, and I the my relationship to film, as it stands now, the impetus for it ended up not being performance.
mm,
It ended up being the writing.
yeah,
Uh, and so what I realized when I came back from New York and I was sitting in Waco, Texas, not really knowing what to do as a professional actor at that point. So this had to be 2011, 2012. Um, I was kind of thinking, man, I've got to get this. Acting requires so much permission, right? You
yeah.
can only do so many monologues in the mirror before you're a crazy person if you're not already, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it requires permission. You need other people to do it. You need other people to watch you do it, or it's really kind of not acting if it's not that. Uh, and I remember thinking, well, what can I do that doesn't require any permission? And this is what I tell students all the time. I say, it doesn't matter how good or bad you are at it. If there's some downtime, you're an actor, if you're a director, whatever, pick up a pen and paper. I mean, figuratively, like sit down on a laptop. Because writing was the most empowering thing that I could have discovered. No question. No
yeah,
question. It was a way for me to, exercise my creative energy in a way that didn't require anybody's permission. Um, and so bringing Ryan back into this conversation, we got an opportunity to be like, well, what does it look like if we actually bring this to fruition? And I remember being on set, Alex, for the first film that we shot. Again, that's garbage that nobody needs to see. Um, and I remember leaving that experience. I remember calling people and being like, this feels like what it felt like to be on stage for the first time, me
hmm,
directing film. I feel like I am where I am exactly where I am supposed to be.
yeah,
Uh, I am not good at it yet. I'm still not going to claim that, but it's where I'm supposed to be. And I fell in love with now that storyteller,
hmm,
the director, writer, storyteller part, more so than the performer part. After having done it, it kind of it shifted. It has shifted.
yeah,
You know, I as I get older, and you know this, Alex, as I get older, the stage work just gets harder and harder. I mean, the demand, the theater is flipping hard, man.
yeah,
It is hard.
yeah.
You
It's hard
know,
work.
if if you go to a play, anybody listening or watching, if you go to a play, you go to a musical, and you get the sense that what those individuals are doing is easy, then those individuals are really, really good at their job. Because it is not.
Yeah,
It is not easy. And again, to do shows on stage, I have to drive, 180 miles round trip. You know, I got 2 kids. I got, you know, burgeoning teenagers and wife, and you know, the time away is just, it's getting more and more difficult, and just the physical and emotional demand of learning
Yeah.
shows, making the drive, leaving class, getting back at midnight, start it
Oof.
for 2, 3 months at a time, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
It'd be hard if I was, you know, if I didn't have to drive so far, if I lived in Chicago and New York and just take a train to rehearsals, it would still be hard just because of what the demand is for the storyteller in that particular medium.
Yeah.
It is the actor's medium, and there is a reason why the stage is the actor's medium. It's all on them, and it's very, very difficult. And even though film is the director's medium, for me, I feel like I have enough control in terms of time and schedule that it's just, it's not easy, but it's easier on my kind of overall life, right?
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense.
Writing takes a lot of intellectual energy, but I don't need anybody's permission, and I can do it anytime. And I could I've sat on my iPad in a chair with everybody in my house asleep and written a script.
Yeah.
You know, it's impossible to do as an actor. Acting, right? That's impossible to do. You
Yeah.
know, I've been on shoots that I'm directing, that I've written and directed, where I'm like, you know what, this is a bad weekend because the fam's got this thing, and I want to do it this weekend instead, and then we move, and then we do it a different weekend. Can't do that with the show. Like,
No.
this is when we open, this is when we close, this is the requirement for that. There's no shifting the schedule. Well, if I'm directing it, I'll make the schedule.
Yeah.
You know? And so the older I get, it's not just the power and the form of that particular medium that I'm falling in love with. It's also what it affords me outside of actually doing it that I really, really love. Uh, and yeah, just to wrap up, this is a really long answer. I still can't think of, even though the theater is exceedingly older, as we discussed, I just can't think of a artistic medium that exists yet that's more collaborative and that's as far-reaching as film.
Yeah.
Right? If you can go to the Uffizi in Italy, and you have to be standing in front of the Birth of Venus to appreciate the painting. The pictures don't do it justice. You
Right.
have to stand in front of it. You have to be there, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I saw this play called Doubt in 2005
Love
by John
that.
Patrick Shanley. It's an
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing play. Blew me,
Yeah.
changed my life. Changed my life. I'll never. I can only explain that experience. I can't share it with anybody.
Yeah.
You know, it means something to me because I was there, but it doesn't. I can't. Even I showed you a video of the play, it's not the same. You had to
It's
have been there.
intangible. Yeah, it's like you
But
shared that with the
film,
people sitting in that room at that time.
yeah,
Absolutely. And
you.
that's it's beautiful in and of itself.
But you can't. That's it. It's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
That's it. So this is going to be a cheesy example, but it's going to bring my point home. I I saw Oppenheimer during the summer, like everybody else, and I was just blown away by the film. Uh, I was really moved by the film. Just if for no other reason, the technical filmmaking is
Hmm.
spectacular.
Yeah.
And I saw it with a couple of buddies, and we were walking out. We are talking about. I was really excited. And, you know, I was gonna go see Barbie. You know, I was doing the Barbie hunt. And I was like, oh man, this film is unbelievable. And I came back, and I remember talking to my wife about it, and she was really mad at me. She was like, well, why didn't you tell me when to go see the movie? I was like, I told you I was going to go see the movie. I didn't know you wanted to see the movie. I thought you were waiting for Barbie. Why are you mad at me? I thought you knew I went to go see it. But she's like, well, I wanted to see Oppenheimer. I was like, okay, great. So it was actually her birthday, August 4th, and a couple of days after, I'm like, listen, I'll go watch it again. Let's go. We'll find somebody with the kids, and we'll go watch it. And I took her to go see it. We went on a date to see the movie. And it was, if I can say, the experience was even better. Like, I liked the movie even more the second time.
Yeah.
But this is my point, Alex. I got to bring a person to share the experience with me because it's the same film.
Right.
right? If it re-releases in the IMAX next summer, people who didn't see it this year can go and experience the exact same thing that I saw.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this very private time capsule moment. I can go and share this exact same thing that I saw with you. I could share it with you in India. I could share it with you in China, Australia, Africa, South America. You
Yeah.
can have the same experience that I had. I can share it with you. And you got to be in front of the painting. You got to be at the show,
Yeah.
right? The other artistic mediums, you've got to. I was in Prague in June, and uh, the the Czech National Symphonic Orchestra played this amazing Mahler 5. And I was standing up in the back with tears in my eyes because it was freaking gorgeous.
It's just here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Even if you brought all those same people out and put them back in their tuxes and brought the conductor out to play it, it would not be the same.
Right.
You know, I can show you Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and
I can show you that anywhere. I can show it to you anywhere. And I don't know. The power of that to me is so alluring and special. I think the draw of the directing acting is I would one day, and I know Ryan feels the same way too. I would love to be not just the kind of fame, Matt and Ben kind of stuff, but I would love to create something one day that makes people feel the way I feel when I watch The Shawshank Redemption or Midnight Cowboy or Sling Blade or,
yeah,
my
yeah,
favorite films are so meaningful to me and they're meaningful things that I can share. Uh, and that's where film to me kind of breaks all the ties for me. That it's not just something that's yes, it can be a solitary process that has to come into the light eventually. But once it comes into the light, it's also something that's infinitely shareable. That's Tom Hanks talks about this. He's like, film is forever. He's like, my performance in Forrest Gump will always be that. It's
hmm
you don't want to be so precious as we were talking about at the beginning, but like once the thing is done, that thing is precious.
yeah,
It's why the Scorseses of the world and Paul Thomas Andersons are crazy about preserving film and working with Kodak, and we can't have that stuff break down.
right.
You know, we have to have Singing in the Rain. Like
Oh my
we
gosh,
have
yeah,
to have The Godfather. Like we have to have Treasure of Sierra Madre. Like that stuff can't break down. We have to preserve that because it's an experience that can be shared. It means something as a result of it being shared. You can actually put people in the room of the actual thing, no matter where they are. And you can't. There's just no other. There's nothing else that's like it.
I mean, it's so true. And the beautiful thing is, obviously, I prefer people watching stuff on the cinema screen and on a bigger TV or whatever. But like, I remember lying in my bed, summer of, I don't know, 2013 or something like that, and wasn't feeling that good. Pulled up the before sunrise on my
Oh,
laptop and just watched it in bed. And the movie ended, and I realized that I'd been smiling for an hour and a half straight, and my face hurt. And I immediately went back to the beginning and watched it again. I was like, this is just beautiful. Like it just made
it's
me
my
feel
favorite. That's
good.
my favorite trilogy of all time.
Oh, it's so
But
good.
all apologies to Francis Ford Coppola. I used to show all the films in class because it's a clinic. It's a clinic for everything in filmmaking.
Yeah,
It's a clinic in acting. It's a clinic in writing. It's a clinic in directing. It's a clinic in cinematography. Like
yeah,
if you watch those films, if you watch all three of those films as a whole, you can learn everything about filmmaking.
totally.
Like
Totally. And it can
it's
move
unbelievable.
you in a even on a laptop screen that big, it can suck you in and move you in a way that is the
Yeah,
same as seeing Doubt in a theater with all those people, right?
that's
Like
right. Yeah.
it's pretty incredible. And actually, I just watched. You're probably gonna be mad at me when I say this, but I just watched the Blues Brothers for the first time yesterday, and we were having so much fun. We were yelling at the TV. Like that movie, I can't imagine what that was like when it came out, and you know, people were like seeing these craziest car chases of all time on the big screen. But like that
But
was just
Alex, that's the whole point. You
yeah,
got to
right.
have that same experience that
Yeah.
the people who saw it, 40 years ago had.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Because the film is the film.
Right.
The film is the film. You know, Belushi and Aykroyd don't have to put on their outfits and go out on stage to do the show again for
Right.
you to have things like it's there.
Yeah.
It's there forever, and you get to share that experience. That experience should be shared with you because it's there. It's just, yeah. I am very, very privileged that I get to think and talk about film for a living, that I get to
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
I know there are people who, and it's not like I'm Steven Spielberg or whatever, but the
We
fact that I get to do it and get paid to do it
yeah.
is kind of sort of a miracle.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And one of the beauties of film too, and tell me if you agree with this, is that it's like, even if you remove the creative side of filmmaking, the making of a film in and of itself is a business in such a way that like it employs every single walk of life, from carpenters to teachers to everybody, accountants,
Yeah.
lawyers. I mean, it's a
This is
cool
why I always say,
medium.
people
Yeah.
get mad at me, but this is why I say it's the most collaborative.
Yeah.
They say, well, in the theater, I'm like, but listen, yes, there are technicians in the theater, but it is on the actor to make that thing go. The lights
Yeah.
come on, that somebody designed, and the curtain opens up, that somebody has to pull, but your response to the story is a result of the performances in the theater.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
the way that's just the way it is. For a movie so the movies that we're talking about, the movies that we've just mentioned, just a few films we've just mentioned, think about all the things that have to go well for the movie to be that good.
It's insane. It's insane.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I've been in shows where I was in Measure for Measure, and the light fell from the top and almost killed an actor.
Yeah.
And the light was removed. We paused the show, and the guy playing the Duke Vicencio, looked around and said, "Is everybody okay?" We moved the light and we resumed the show, and the show was terrific.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody didn't do their job that night, and the actors saved the show.
Yeah.
If the sound isn't good in your movie,
Bye. Done.
production design,
Yeah.
cinematography, performances, it's got to be well written. You've got to have a colorist.
Editing.
Like, do you have to go ADR? And then all the stuff, all the administrative duties that you're talking about, right? How over budget are we? How on budget are we? What are we doing about promotion? What are we doing about marketing? What
Advertising? Yeah.
For a movie to go, think about how many people had to be good at their job for Oppenheimer to be made. Right?
Yeah, it's insane.
IMAX created black and white 70 millimeter for the movie.
Yeah.
Like all the things that had to go well for that to be a success. It's insane when you start breaking it down, the things that have to go well for a movie to be good. It's really easy to make a bad movie. We can make one right now, right? But for a movie to be good, how many people have to be good at what they do for a film to be good? For a singular film to be good? It's unparalleled. It's truly unparalleled. That's why I always say it's the most collaborative, because it requires the most people to be good for it to be good.
No, I mean 100%, and I think like this is probably like delving more into like the sort of current culture and all that kind of stuff. But like it is really sad. I saw this on Instagram or something the other day. It's sad when these things are referred to as content. It's just like you know what I mean? Like it's like just make more content. It's a machine, whatever. And it is like yeah, I know that there's a business side of it, 100%. Like that's built in, that's baked in. But it's when we're talking about like the Oppenheimers and the Blues Brothers and the films that are just transcendent. Like it's not content. It's changed people's lives. Like it's
Correct. Yeah. Well, there's this great merge, right, Alex, of the availability of technology. And so I think in the larger conversation, what happens is there's this blur that, well, wait, isn't TikTok film? Isn't a reel on Instagram film? I'm filming it. That's film. That's content. So I think for some people, it's not for us, but I think the gap between a really clever, really funny TikTok video and Oppenheimer, that the gap isn't that wide
Yeah.
for some people.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Well, no, and I'm definitely not like saying that TikTok creators aren't artful, because there is some very creative and
But
fun
it's
and
a
stuff. But
totally
to create
different thing.
oh yeah, 100%. I mean, to create a 30-second video, like to create a commercial that's cool and fun and whatever, easy to watch, like
Yeah.
that's one thing. That's a couple weeks or whatever, and to create a movie that lasts for, you know, at least the foreseeable future
Yeah.
is a totally different conversation. But yeah.
Yeah. You got to wonder. Sometimes I wonder too, like, what if Fellini had an iPhone or Ingmar Bergman? What if some of the great auteurs of the past had access to the technology that we have in our pocket?
Yeah.
Would that change the conversation? But then you still have, like, to your point, you still have people like Scorsese who are going around bemoaning the state of cinema and how dare you call it content, and
Yeah.
who have access to all the technology we have access to, who are really interested in the sacredness of it. There is
Mhm.
no blur,
Yeah.
between what they do, what he does, and the power to create content or shoot a video at a moment's notice. And so I I think we might be in the minority, but I kind of skew toward Scorsese. Like, even for the Marvel stuff, like I think superhero movies fall in a different category of cinema for me than some of
Yeah.
the stuff we're
Well,
talking about.
and that's not to say that like an end game didn't move a ton of people. And God, like the payoff for the people that invested their time to follow that story through its conclusion,
Right.
and like sat in that theater and had that religious experience of watching, like, more
That's right.
power to them. That's awesome. Like
Yeah.
it's not totally but I'm a Star Wars fan, so it's like,
Right.
it's I mean, then there's the whole conversation about Disney Star Wars versus Lucas Star Wars, and that's a whole nother thing. But
Yeah.
anyway, I don't think, like, I don't think I agree with Scorsese in the fact that, like, some of those Marvel movies can be religious experiences for people, for sure, but some of
Yeah.
them are slapped together, feel like they're written by AI, and
Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
don't feel like they have any kind of motivation behind them other than the
Making
dollar.
a bunch of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. I do appreciate, and somebody like Scorsese doesn't have to consider this, but I appreciate what those particular movies do to the economy of filmmaking. And
Yeah.
when I talk to people about this, I equate it to, I am not a huge, despite my chosen profession, I'm actually not a very big musical theater fan.
Really.
I'm not a musical theater performer. I mean, I sing, but I don't sing in that particular style. Um, but for every Hamilton on Broadway, you can do like three A View from the Bridges with Chairs by Arthur Miller,
Yeah.
right? Like, a hit musical affords the kind of stuff that I respond to in terms of straight plays and dramas. And
Totally.
I feel like, you know what? I'm not going to be the first in line for the next Marvel movie, but I can go to the same theater and watch before midnight, right? Because
Yeah.
they can distribution wise, they can afford to do that because of how much money they made off of that thing that everybody and their dog saw. So I appreciate it in that regard. I think it's important for the economy of filmmaking. I think it actually makes room for the A24s of the world, to be able to distribute their films, films that I would prefer. I
Yeah.
think it's a necessary part of the ecosystem. It's just, in a lot of cases, I feel like we're talking about different things when you start talking about some of those films and Oppenheimers and the Shawshanks and that kind of stuff.
I do think A24 is a unicorn, though, in the sense that and this is, I think, something that, like, Crafty strives to be. And if we get even 1% of the way there, we'll have been a success in my eyes. But that people go to the theater to see an A24 movie. It's almost like a Steven Spielberg or a Christopher Nolan. They don't go to the theater to see a Fox Searchlight movie.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
That's
like
right.
they do, the A24 brand is,
They have a brand. Yeah.
They do. And they're so smart. I don't know how they're doing it. If I, again, like 1% of the way there, but like they are so smart in the way that they market their movies, and they are creating that thing that you know, that we respond to, which is pushing the boundaries of cinema and doing really cool avant-garde stuff. And they have figured out the economics of it in such a way that, like, and the marketing of it, that people go to the theater because it's an A24 movie, not because it's directed by so-and-so or starring so-and-so.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They obviously they're not hurting for cash, but they're never, unless they change their model in terms of the filmmakers that they attract, they're still not reaching for Avengers. They're not going to make Avengers money.
No.
They're not going to make Oppenheimer and Barbie money. They're not going to make that.
No.
And so I think the unicorn part is they're more invested in the storytelling and the storyteller, that whatever the risks are financially, they're willing to take. And they've been winning in terms of the reward back on, you know, I was reading the other day, I was talking to Maverick about this. I think the most expensive film they've ever made is Beau is Afraid.
Really?
Yeah.
What was the budget on that?
People did not go out in droves
to
Beau is Afraid. You know, I think they're making a little bit of money on the video on demand end, on the rental end, but that's a tough movie to get through, man.
I haven't seen it.
I got to look it up. I don't know what the number is, but I remember reading that it was the most expensive. So like they had to think that, hey, we're taking a chance on this movie.
For sure.
Because we believe in the filmmakers, which that's an Ari Aster, isn't it?
Yeah. So and he had some. Hereditary was obviously a hit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hereditary.
Yeah.
So yeah, a filmmaker they worked with before that obviously they love and really trust and invest all this money in them, and there's no way they got their money back on Beau. But that's what I love about a group like A24. You know, they were willing to take that risk because they believe in the storyteller. And that's what the studio system used to do. Like the studio system used to do that. They used to, they used to diversify their risk and say like, and A24 made a killing on Everything Everywhere All at Once, which shouldn't have been a huge success. I mean, it wasn't obvious by any means. And so it's like they spread their risk out, and they tend to lean into some genre content, which does really well. So it's like, I think they're just so smart, and they're my favorite. You know, I will support them as long as they keep this model forever. You know, to have I mean, they're the group that released Moonlight, Alex. Like, who was going to put Moonlight out? Who was going to put that movie out?
And wins Best Picture. Like,
you know, that's old school, what you're talking about. Like, I think Moonlight in the 80s and 90s gets put out by a big studio group, and it wins 100%. Best Picture. And, you know, a movie like it, I don't think content-wise it would have been as progressive back then. But
Sure.
Yeah, to have a platform that's that wants to take risk on movies like that, I'm just eternally grateful, because the studio system now, they won't put out movies like that. Think about the movies. Who puts out Good Will Hunting now? Or, you know, who puts out Reservoir Dogs?
The streamers, pretty much straight to streaming. And even then it's not.
Yeah.
Even then, it's not as risky. It feels a little bit more, a little less cobbled together and a little more slick. Even like, I mean, God, like we could probably have a 3-hour conversation about this, but just like Lord of the Rings, you know, Lord of the Rings had such a texture to it, and it felt it wasn't so slick and so perfect, but it was still magical and had all the effects.
Yeah.
And then it's like
Yeah.
you spend $1 billion or whatever on Rings of Power, and to me it looks like it was shot on an iPhone with denoise added on every single frame. Like I just, like it doesn't have texture. And I think that they're so afraid, like, we spent so much money on this,
It's got to be perfect.
every frame has to look like it was photoshopped, like, perfectly.
Yeah.
And it's just like there's something about that disconnect. It's not real. It's starting to feel like AI. It's filters on Instagram and
Yes,
and that
exactly.
kind of thing,
Yeah, and there's the blur happens again.
Yeah. But okay, so anyway, you disappeared. Are you still there?
Yeah, my phone's about to die. I'm on my phone.
Okay, so super quick before your phone dies.
Haven't we?
We have. So what is next for you? Where can people learn about you and your work, and talk about sort of what's coming?
Yes, really quickly. 4 a.m. Tip Revival wrote this script in the spring called Adieu. It's dedicated to my mother, who I mentioned before is a middle school theater arts teacher. And the concept of the story is this middle school teacher, this African American older woman, is directing her middle school class through a production of Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare.
Love it.
And
my favorite
in the middle of the rehearsal, she has to deal with an active shooter. Is the setup for the film.
Oh, wow.
So we've been in pre-production. We're attempting to offer a name because I have a generous sum of money. I have the most money I've ever had for a short film. I have like Louisiana Film Prize money to make this film, which is a major gift.
That's so exciting.
And so we want to offer a name, and we were in the process of doing that before the strike.
Sure.
And so, because a lot of my funding is coming through Baylor, where I work, we've been working on interim agreements, and maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel here with the WGA resolving, and I think SAG's meeting Monday or Tuesday with some AMPTP folks. So maybe the strike will be, but I was prepared for it to not be over to like January, and so we're kind of in pre-production, holding cell right now, with the hope of shooting it in January, but I haven't been able to make. We really want to offer a role to a SAG actor, and that individual be a producer and kind of the centerpiece for bringing everybody else on board. And it's really hard for me to move forward without having that person. So yeah, I mean, that's the next thing that's up. I'm gonna be on the road.
That's awesome.
I'm going back to Dallas Theater Center to do A Christmas Carol. So we'll start rehearsals Halloween night, and I won't be done until New Year's Eve on that. And then next year, I'm doing a one-person show about Louis Armstrong called Satchmo at the Waldorf. That'll take me through March and April, and hopefully I'll have a finished movie.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Amazing.
busy. Let's come down the pipe. But I'm very, very, very. I've never been more excited about a creative project, the potential of a creative project than Adieu. So I'm really hoping we can get the ball rolling on it, and maybe down the road put it on Crafty.
Love to hear that. Yes. No, definitely keep sharing your work. We love Con Alma. Thank you so much for putting it on the platform, and
thanks for choosing it. We do appreciate it. I'm glad it's out there now. I know it has not been online. It hasn't even been public on Vimeo, and so I'm really, really happy. People are already asking me, "Oh, it's out now. Can I see it?" And so I'm glad to direct people to Crafty, to the platform. I'm glad it's out there now. Yes. That can be shared in perpetuity, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we will. We'll keep pushing it, and I know the audiences are going to love it. So yeah, thanks again, and thanks for your time for doing this interview.
You're welcome. Thank you, Alex. Best of luck. Hope to see you in a few weeks.